Hello there, students. This is a part 2 of the if function. I'm recording this at a slightly different time, so I'm not going to appear before you as I did in the last video. And between then and now, I've manipulated my spreadsheet a little bit. So if you're coming right from part 1, you'll notice that my spreadsheet now has some additional information in it. And really the point of part 2 is just to demonstrate how we can actually use textual elements within the test part of our if function. In addition, I want to show you that we can actually use some calculations in different areas of the if function as well. So what I've done is I've added two columns. The first column I added here was column B, and that's a class level. So what I'm doing is really assuming that all of these classes or these averages are part of classes that have a particular level. So here I have an AP level class, so that would be an advanced placement class, and then S would be for a standard class. What I would like to do is I would like to calculate some averages for this particular student. Now normally what we would do is we would calculate an average in a straightforward manner. So I have the student averages here. You notice I added this additional label here. If I wanted to calculate an average for the student, I could just create my average function as normal, and we get a value there. Now you may have to format that. It may not come out the same way as mine. I had been working with the spreadsheet in the past, so the value was bold and center aligned previously. So that's all well and good, but sometimes we have students that are taking AP classes, and what we like to do is inflate their AP classes in such a way that they get a little bit more credit for the AP classes than they would a standard level class. So one of the last things I added was this column here. I inserted a column in between the student averages and pass-fail, and I've titled it inflated average. What I would like to do with this column is to take these raw scores that we have in column C, and I would like to transform them to different averages if in fact the average comes from an AP class. Now certainly with the 8 or 9 grades that I have here, I could probably do that manually, but given the fact that the spreadsheet can do this work for us, we want to tap into that power. So what we would like to do is to create a formula here that we can copy down the column that would automatically check this grade, see if it's from a class of AP level, and if it is, it's going to inflate it. Now the mathematical calculation for inflating the grade varies from school to school, but at our school we give a 10% inflation to any class from an for any average from an AP class. So what we want to do is we want to check to see if the average is from an AP level class, and if it is, we want to boost that average up by 10%. So let's take a look at how we would do that. We'd start with the if function, and we're not going to spend any time on the structure because we already covered that in part 1. And now we build our test. What is the test? Well, again, it's if the class is an AP class, then we want to inflate the grade, otherwise we'll just leave it the way it is. So what I need to do is build the test so that the spreadsheet is capable of telling me whether or not this class was an AP class. So what I'm going to do is take B4, and I'm going to check to see if it is equal to the word AP. So you see there on my screen in my formula, I typed B4 equals and then AP in quotation marks. As we saw in the last video, any textual element that you want to treat as just text has to be included within quotation marks. Now what if that is true? What if the class is an AP class? Well then what I want to do is I want to inflate this average by 10%. Now there's a number of ways that we can perform that calculation mathematically. I could take that value and then add to it 10% of that value, so 10% times C4. That's one particular calculation. All right, I'm going to leave that for now, but I'll go back and show you another calculation you could have actually used there as well. But that is a sufficient calculation to add 10% of C4. But the last section is for whether or not, or what to do if the condition was false. If the test was false, what do I put there? And there, of course, all I want to do is just put the value C4. So essentially, my if function is going to check to see if B4 is equal to AP, and if it is, it's going to put whatever the result of C4 plus 10% of C4 is, and if it is not, it's just going to put C4 in. So let's take a look at how that worked. Notice here that the inflated average for this grade is 100.1 because it is of AP level. And if I copy this formula down using the fill handle, you'll see that many of my grades actually stayed the same, and it was only those grades that were of the standard level. So here's the other AP class we have, a 74, and that was inflated to an 81. Now I can take the average of this. I could actually type out the formula if I want, but because this formula works exactly the way the other one does, I can just use the fill handle to copy it over there. So you can see that I have a new average of 77.94. Alright, so that's a nice little feature. We can actually compare two textual elements within our spreadsheet, and then we can also perform calculations in our if function as well. Now let's just take a quick look at another way we could actually perform that calculation. Some of you may have already noticed that this was probably a little bit more than it needed to be. All I really needed to do was take C4 and multiply by 110%, because that's what I want. I want an additional 10%, so I want all of C4, which is 100%, and 10 more percent of C4, so that's 110%. So I could just multiply by 110%. You'll notice we get the same value. But additionally, I could also use the decimal version of 110%, and I could also multiply by 1.1, and that will give me the same value there.